You're pulled over. The officer walks up to your window, and before you can even say hello, they ask one question. Do you have any weapons in the vehicle? Your heart starts racing. Your palms sweat. And whatever you say next could either protect you or put you in handcuffs. Quick question before we go any further. Are you subscribed yet? Because what I'm about to break down could save you from a decade in prison, or worse. 90% of gun owners get this wrong, and I don't want you to be one of them. Hit that subscribe button right now. Seriously. Yeah. This information is too important to miss. Let me tell you what happened to a concealed carry permit holder in Ohio last month. We'll call him Mike. Mike was driving home from the range. His pistol was locked in the center console, completely legal under his state's concealed carry laws. He gets pulled over for a broken taillight. The officer walks up and asks, "Do you have any weapons in the car?" Mike, trying to be honest and cooperative, responds, "Yes, officer. I have a pistol in my center console. Sounds responsible, right?" Wrong. Within 2 minutes, Mike is face down on the pavement. His vehicle is being searched. He's being treated like a criminal. Why? Because he didn't understand the legal framework behind that one simple question. Now, let's be clear. Mike didn't break any laws. But his answer triggered a chain reaction that turned a routine traffic stop into a nightmare. And this happens every single day across America. So what should you say instead? The 5 words that could change everything. But before we get to that, you need to understand why this question is so dangerous in the first place. When an officer asks whether you have weapons, they aren't just making small talk. They're conducting what's known as a safety inquiry. And here's the part nobody explains. Your answer can create what attorneys call probable cause expansion. In other words, your own words may give the officer legal justification to do things they otherwise couldn't, like ordering you out of the vehicle, separating you from passengers, searching your car, or calling for backup. All because you answered a simple question. Here's the shocking part. In most states, you are not legally required to answer that question at all. Unless your state has what's called a duty to inform law, you have 0 legal obligation to disclose that you're carrying. 0. Let me say that again because it matters. Unless your state specifically requires it by law, you do not have to answer when police ask about weapons. Most gun owners don't realize this. They assume being honest and cooperative means answering every question. But here's what the law actually says. Your Fifth Amendment right protects you from self-incrimination. That means you can decline to answer questions that might later be used against you. And before you say, "But I'm not doing anything wrong," listen carefully. It doesn't matter whether you're completely legal. What matters is how your words can be interpreted and used. Remember Mike? He was completely legal and still ended up on the pavement. Now here's where it gets even more important. Roughly a dozen states have duty to inform laws. These states require you to tell an officer you're carrying, usually at the beginning of the encounter. States like Ohio, Louisiana, Michigan, North Carolina, and a few others. If you're in one of these states, you must inform the officer. But even there, how you inform them matters more than you think. We'll get to that in a moment. For everyone else, the majority of states without duty to inform laws, you have options. And that's where those 5 words come in. But first you need to understand the 3 massive mistakes people make during this interaction. Mistake number 1, over-explaining. People get nervous and start talking too much. Yes, officer, I have a gun, but it's registered and I have my permit and it's locked up and I'm a law-abiding citizen. Stop. Every extra word is a potential liability. The more you talk, the more information you give. The more information you give, the less control you have. Mistake number 2, lying. Some people panic and say no, even when they are carrying. That is the worst possible move. If the officer discovers the weapon later during the stop, you've now created a new legal problem. You've lied. You've destroyed credibility. You've turned a traffic stop into a criminal issue. Never lie. Mistake number 3, sudden movements. This one is critical. As soon as they're asked about weapons, people instinctively reach for their permit or point toward where the firearm is located. Don't. Keep your hands visible at all times. Sudden movements can be misinterpreted instantly, and we all know how badly that can go. If this is already helping you, imagine what you'll learn in my next video where I break down the exact body language and tone to use during police encounters. Subscribe right now. so you don't miss it. Over 50,000 gun owners already trust this channel for life-saving legal insight. Join them. Now, here are the 5 words you need to remember. Ready? I decline to answer that. That's it. 5 words. Simple, clear, legally protected. Let me explain why they work. First, you're not lying. You're not being hostile. You're not refusing a lawful order. You are simply exercising your constitutional right to remain silent on that specific question. The Supreme Court has made it clear in cases like Salinas v. Texas that you must explicitly invoke your right to silence. You can't just stay quiet and assume it's understood. You have to say it. That's why these 5 words matter. Second, these words don't give the officer anything additional to use. You are not admitting to having a weapon. You are not denying it either. You are creating legal ambiguity. An ambiguity does not equal probable cause. Third, it's respectful. You're not saying, that's none of your business. You're not escalating the situation. You're using professional language that signals you understand your rights. And here's something most people don't realize. Many officers respect calm, informed citizens who exercise their rights properly. Quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Laws vary by state and by circumstance. Always consult a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction for advice specific to your situation. Now let's walk through how this plays out in real life. Officer approaches. You provide license and registration. Officer asks, do you have any weapons in the vehicle? You maintain eye contact, keep your hands on the steering wheel, and calmly respond, Officer, I decline to answer that question. Then you stop talking. You don't fill the silence. You don't justify yourself. You don't apologize. You wait. Here's what happens next. The officer has 3 options. Option 1. They accept your response and continue the stop normally. This happens more often than you think, especially when you remain calm and respectful. Option 2. They ask why you won't answer. If that happens, you repeat, I'm exercising my right to decline to answer that question. Nothing more. Option 3. They order you out of the vehicle for officer safety. If that happens, you comply immediately. You can decline to answer questions, but you cannot refuse lawful orders. Here's something that surprises most people. Even if you are ordered out of the vehicle, you still have not waived your right to remain silent. You can step out, keep your hands visible, and continue declining to answer questions about weapons. The officer may conduct a pat-down for weapons, what's known as a Terry Frisk, if they have reasonable suspicion for their safety, but they still cannot search your vehicle without probable cause or your consent. And your silence alone is not probable cause. There's more you need to understand, especially about duty to inform states and how to handle those properly. Now let's talk about duty to inform states. If you live in a state that legally requires you to notify an officer that you're carrying, the 5-word response alone is not enough. In those states, you must inform the officer. But here's what most people don't understand. How you inform them matters just as much as informing them. If you're in a duty to inform state, here is the correct script. Before the officer even asks about weapons, keep your hands on the steering wheel and say, Officer, I'm required to inform you that I have a valid concealed carry permit and I'm currently armed. My weapon is in the center console. My permit is in my wallet. How would you like me to proceed? Notice what just happened. You fulfilled your legal obligation. You informed them calmly. You told them where the weapon is. You stated that you're legally permitted, and then you handed control back to the officer. You didn't reach. You didn't move suddenly. You didn't over-explain. You gave exactly what the law requires, and nothing more. That's the key. Now here's something controversial. Some people say you should always be completely honest with police, no matter what. They argue that invoking your rights makes you look guilty. Here's the reality. The legal system does not reward honesty the way people think it does. Prosecutors use statements against people every single day, even statements made with good intentions. Defense attorneys across the country will tell you the same thing. You have rights for a reason. Use them. Let me give you a hypothetical example. Imagine you're carrying a pistol you inherited from your grandfather. It's legal for you to own. But you live in a state that requires registration, and you didn't know that. Officer asks if you have weapons. You answer honestly and explain the situation. You just admitted to a crime you didn't even know existed. Gun laws are complex. They vary dramatically by state. And people accidentally incriminate themselves all the time. Here's another scenario. You're traveling through a state with magazine capacity restrictions. You have a standard 15-round magazine, completely legal where you live. But the state you're passing through treats that as a felony. Officer asks about weapons. You answer honestly. You've now handed them the evidence they need. Honesty alone didn't protect you. Understanding your rights would have. This is why your response must be strategic, not emotional. Now let's go through 3 real-world scenarios where the 5-word response protects you. Scenario 1, Dewey checkpoint. You're completely sober. They're asking every driver whether there are weapons in the vehicle. You respond, I decline to answer that. They process you and send you on your way. If you had said yes, even legally, you may have been diverted for additional screening. Your silence kept the interaction short. Scenario 2, reciprocity confusion. You're carrying under reciprocity from your home state permit. You're not 100% sure how every local restriction works in the state you're currently in. Officer asks about weapons. Instead of trying to explain complex reciprocity laws on the roadside, you decline to answer. You avoided potentially misstatements that could later be used against you. Scenario 3, passenger weapon. You're driving. Your passenger has a firearm. The officer asks if there are weapons in the vehicle. If you say yes, you may unintentionally take responsibility. If you say no, you've lied. I decline to answer that. You avoided both traps. Here's what most people misunderstand about police encounters. Cooperation does not mean answering every question. Cooperation means complying with lawful orders. Those are 2 very different things. Let's break it down clearly. A question sounds like this. Do you have any weapons? Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? These are voluntary. You can decline to answer. An order sounds like this. A step out of the vehicle. A keep your hands where I can see them. A give me your license and registration. Those are not voluntary. You must comply. Understanding this distinction is critical. You can be fully cooperative while still protecting your rights. Now let's talk about what not to say. Don't immediately say, am I being detained? In an aggressive tone. Don't say, I know my rights, as a challenge. Don't threaten to call your lawyer unless you're actually being detained or arrested. Don't record the officer without understanding your state's consent laws. All of these behaviors can escalate a situation unnecessarily. Your objective is simple. Protect your rights. Keep the encounter calm. Avoid escalation. The 5-word response accomplishes that. Here's what you should do today, before you ever need this information. First, research whether your state has a duty to inform law. Use your state legislature website or a reliable firearm law resource. Know your state's requirements. Second, practice saying the 5 words out loud. Say them in your car. Say them in front of a mirror. Make them natural. Stress changes how people speak. Practice removes hesitation. Third, if you're in a duty to inform state, memorize the proper script. Fourth, keep your documents organized. License, registration, insurance, carry permit, if applicable. Make sure you can access them without digging through hidden areas of your vehicle. And here's something rarely discussed. Keep a small card in your wallet with your attorney's phone number. If the situation escalates, if you're asked to come to the station, if you're being detained, that's when you clearly state, I want to speak with my attorney, and you provide that number. That's not suspicious. That's smart. Now there's another important layer to this. The 5-word response works during traffic stops. But what about other encounters? What if you're open carrying and someone calls the police? What if officers knock on your door? The principle remains the same. You have the right to decline to answer questions, but the tactics shift depending on location. If police knock on your door, you might say, Officer, I'm not answering questions without my attorney present. Inside your home, officers generally need a warrant to enter without your consent. And during a traffic stop, they have broader authority for safety reasons. Understanding these differences gives you control. Your rights don't disappear based on location, but how you exercise them may change. We're not done yet. Next, I'm going to tie everything together and walk you through how to stay calm, controlled, and legally protected from start to finish. Now let's bring everything together. When an officer asks if you have weapons in the vehicle, your response cannot be emotional. It cannot be reactive. It has to be deliberate. You now understand two critical paths. If you're in a duty to inform state, you inform calmly and clearly using the proper script. If you're not in a duty to inform state, you use the 5 words. I decline to answer that. You stay calm. You stay respectful. You follow lawful orders, and you stop talking beyond what is legally required. That combination protects you. But there's another layer most people overlook: tone and body control. The words matter, but how you say them matters just as much. When you respond, your hands should remain visible, ideally resting on the steering wheel. Your movements should be slow and deliberate. Your voice should be steady, not defensive. You're not challenging authority. You're not debating the law on the roadside. You're simply exercising a constitutional right. And that right has been reinforced repeatedly by the courts, including decisions like Salinas v. Texas, which made clear that silence must be explicitly invoked to be protected. That's why you say it clearly. Now let's revisit the 3 possible outcomes after you decline to answer. First outcome: the officer moves on. This is more common than people think. If you remain calm and respectful, many officers will simply proceed with the original reason for the stop. Second outcome: the officer presses further. They may ask, "Why won't you answer?" Or, "What are you hiding?" Your response does not change. Your response does not change. I'm exercising my right to decline to answer that question. No anger, no sarcasm. No extra explanation, just calm repetition. Third outcome: you're asked to step out of the vehicle. Under cases like Pennsylvania v. MIMS, officers generally have authority to order a driver out of the vehicle during a lawful traffic stop. If that happens, you comply immediately. You step out slowly. You keep your hands visible. You do not argue. Complying with lawful orders is not the same as waiving your rights. You can step out and still decline to answer questions. You can comply and remain silent beyond what is required. That distinction is everything. Now let's address something people struggle with internally. Silence feels uncomfortable. People instinctively want to fill the silence. They want to explain. They want to reassure the officer. That instinct can cost you. Every extra sentence creates variables you cannot control. The safest verbal strategy is minimalism. Answer what is legally required. NASD required. Decline what is voluntary. Comply with lawful orders. Nothing more. Let's revisit the hypothetical situations to reinforce this. You inherited a firearm and aren't sure about registration rules. Declining to answer prevents accidental confession. You're traveling through a state with different magazine restrictions. Declining to answer prevents roadside legal analysis. You're unsure about reciprocity details. Declining to answer prevents misstatements. Your silence is not obstruction. Your silence is protection. Your silence is protection. And remember, silence alone is not probable cause. Officers may conduct a limited pat-down, known as a Terry frisk, if they have reasonable suspicion for safety. That principle comes from Terry v. Ohio, but a frisk is not the same as a vehicle search. They still need probable cause or consent to search your car, which brings up another critical point. Never consent to a search. If asked, "Hey, do you mind if I take a look inside your vehicle?" The correct response is, "I do not consent to any searches." Calm, clear, direct. Consent removes your ability to challenge the search later. If they search anyway without legal grounds, that becomes an issue for court, not the roadside. Now let's talk about emotional control. Traffic stops are stressful. Firearms make them more intense. Stress causes people to talk too much. That's why preparation matters. Practice the words, visualize the scenario. Rehearse staying calm, because in the moment, adrenaline will spike. Your preparation determines your reaction. And here's something important. Exercising your rights does not make you anti-police. It makes you legally informed. There's a difference. You can respect law enforcement and still protect yourself legally. Those two ideas are not opposites. In fact, calm professionalism often reduces tension. Now, think back to Mike. The first stop escalated because he volunteered information without understanding the legal implications. The second stop was different. The officer asked about weapons. Mike calmly responded. Officer, I decline to answer that question. The officer wrote the ticket for the broken taillight and sent him on his way. 4 minutes. No search. No pavement. No drama. The difference wasn't luck. It was knowledge. We're almost done. We're almost done. Let's lock this in. The next time you're pulled over and an officer asks whether you have weapons in the vehicle, you will not react emotionally. You will respond strategically. Here is the complete framework. If you are in a duty to inform state, you inform immediately and calmly. Officer, I'm required to inform you that I have a valid concealed carry permit and I'm currently armed. My weapon is in the center console. My permit is in my wallet. Ooh, how would you like me to proceed? Hands visible. No sudden movements, no over-explaining, no extra commentary. You fulfill the legal requirements and nothing more. If you are not in a duty to inform state, you use the 5 words. I decline to answer that. Clear, calm, respectful. Then you stop talking. You do not fill the silence. You do not debate roadside law. You do not justify yourself. If they ask again, you repeat it. If they order you out of the vehicle, you comply. If they conduct a pat-down consistent with principles recognized in cases like Terry v. Ohio, you remain calm. If they ask to search your vehicle, you say, I do not consent to any searches. Nothing more. You follow lawful orders. You decline voluntary questions. You never lie. You never make sudden movements. That is the formula. Let's simplify it even further so you can remember it under stress. Answer what is legally required. Decline what is voluntary. Comply with lawful orders. Never consent to searches. Never lie. That's it. Now understand something critical. This is not about winning a roadside interaction. This is about protecting your future. Statements made during traffic stops are routinely used in courtrooms. Prosecutors build cases from small admissions. Misstatements get twisted. Intentions don't matter nearly as much as recorded words. And once words are spoken, you cannot take them back. Your Fifth Amendment protection exists for a reason. In cases like Salinas v. Texas reinforced that you must clearly invoke that protection. Silence must be intentional. Silence must be verbalized. That's why the 5 words work. Now let's address mindset. Some people believe that invoking rights makes you appear guilty. The legal system does not operate on appearances. It operates on evidence. You are not required to build a case against yourself. You are not required to volunteer information. You are required to comply with lawful orders. Those are not the same thing. Respect and legal awareness can coexist. Calmness and firmness can coexist. You can protect yourself without escalating. That is the balance. Before we close, here's what you should do today. Confirm whether your state has a duty to inform law. Memorize the correct script for your situation. Practice saying the 5 words out loud. Keep your documents accessible. Keep your attorney's number stored in your wallet. Preparation removes hesitation. Hesitation causes mistakes. And mistakes during police encounters can carry lifelong consequences. When an officer asks about weapons, your heart may still race. That's normal. But now you have a plan. You understand the legal framework. You understand the difference between questions and orders. You understand when to inform and when to decline. You understand why minimal words offer maximum protection. Think back to Mike. The first stop turned chaotic because he believed honesty alone would protect him. The second stop was controlled because he understood his rights. Same person, same state, same type of traffic stop, different outcome. Knowledge made the difference. This entire discussion is for educational purposes only. It is not legal advice. Laws vary by state and change over time. Always consult a qualified attorney in your jurisdiction for guidance specific to your situation. Stay calm, stay respectful, stay legally informed. And remember, when that question comes, I decline to answer that. Fono, decline to answer.